Who's actually going to get the most out of the Teradek Bolt 6750 receiver for a SmallHD Smart 7, and who can safely walk away? If you're on the fence about spending a few $100s on a wireless video link, you probably want to know whether the range, latency, and integration actually translate into smoother shoots, or if you're just buying hype. Link is in the description if you want to check the product details on Amazon. When I first started looking at wireless video solutions for my documentary crew, the biggest headache was the constant trade-off between distance and image quality. The older Teradek units could reach a few hundred feet, but you'd lose a few lines of resolution or start seeing jitter. The newer Bolt 6 promises a 750-foot range while still handling a full 4K P30 stream with less than a millisecond of delay. That claim alone is enough to make a lot of people sit up, because in a real-world shoot, say, a moving vehicle chase or a rooftop interview, being able to walk a few hundred feet away from the camera and still see a crisp, lag-free picture on your monitor can change the whole workflow. The first thing I appreciated about the Bolt 6 is how it's built around the SmallHD Smart 7. The mounting interface is literally a vount, which means you slide the receiver in, tighten a single lock, and you're ready to go. There's no need to scramble for cables or worry about mismatched connectors. For anyone who already runs a SmallHD on a gimbal or on a drone, that plug-and-play feel is a real time saver. I tested the setup on a gimbal rig for a music video where the camera was constantly moving around a stage. The receiver stayed locked in place, the monitor displayed a clean 4K image, and I never had to pause to realign a cable. Range is where the Bolt 6 really tries to separate itself from the competition. In a test on an empty parking lot, I placed the transmitter on a DSLR rig and walked the receiver-equipped Smart 7 out to about 720 feet. The picture stayed solid, with no pixelation or dropouts, even when I turned the camera to face a slightly different direction. That's the kind of reliability you need when you're shooting a live event in a stadium or a construction site where you can't keep the camera crew within a tight radius. The non-DFS frequency band, 5.190 to 6.425 GHz, also helps because it sidesteps the Wi-Fi channels that are often crowded at festivals. In my experience, that translates into fewer "what the heck is that" static moments that would otherwise force you back into a wired setup. Low latency is another claim that can feel abstract until you see it in action. The spec says less than 0.001 seconds, which is essentially zero from a human perception standpoint. I ran a side-by-side test with a wired HDMI feed and the Bolt 6 link. The difference on the monitor was invisible. Any motion on the subject appeared simultaneously on both screens. For a director who needs to cue actors or for a livestream operator who can't afford a half-second lag, that near-instantaneous transmission is a genuine advantage. Now, no product is perfect, and the Bolt 6 does have a few practical trade-offs. First, it only works with the SmallHD Smart 7, or other monitors that share the same vount footprint. If your workflow relies on a different display like a larger field monitor or a tablet screen, you'll need an adapter or a completely different solution, which adds cost and complexity. Second, the frequency range, while free of DFS, still sits in a band that can be crowded in dense urban environments where many broadcasters, police, and even some Wi-Fi equipment operate. I did notice occasional micro-interference when I tested it next to a broadcast truck, though the signal never dropped completely. That suggests you'll get the best results when you have a clear line of sight or when you can plan channel selection ahead of time. Another point to consider is power. The receiver itself draws power from the vount battery you already have for the monitor, so you don't need a separate pack, but that also means the battery life of your whole rig is now shared between the monitor and the wireless link. In a long-day shoot, you may find yourself swapping batteries more often than you would with a wired HDMI cable. It's not a deal-breaker, but it's something to factor into your gear budget. Price is where the rubber meets the road. The Bolt 6 sits in the higher-end bracket for wireless receivers, and the price tag can feel steep if you're only shooting occasional events. However, if you're a freelance cinematographer who frequently works on location, a documentary team that needs to stay mobile, or a live event crew that can't afford the latency of a standard SD to HDMI extender, the cost starts to make sense. You're buying not just a transmitter, but a system that removes a lot of the physical constraints that otherwise force you to run heavy cables across a set. So, who should buy this? If you already own a SmallHD Smart 7 and you need a reliable way to move your camera up to 3/4 of a kilometer away,